On this episode of ResiWeek, WhyReboot has a new Wi-Fi 6 network platform and Dante in residential. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 220, Technically Competent.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation.
and by Access Networks.
Hey, welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by three really good close friends of mine. First, we have Jimmy Paskey. He is in charge of residential sales for Surgex. How are you, sir?
Fantastic, man. Thanks for having me back here.
Thank you so much for being here. Then we have the one and only Uncle Richie, Mr. Richard Fergosa. He's the principal at Fergosa Design. How are you, sir?
Good, mellow West Coast sheltered in place greetings. So from my embedded location.
Aren't you happy that you just have to it's fantastic, man.
Ball guy, exactly.
I couldn't tell the difference. The next we have David Pedigo. He is the director of residential technology at Auroralex. How are you, sir?
I'm at Auroralex, and
Auroralex.
I am.
We just went through this.
I am super. Thanks for asking.
Thank you so much for being here, gentlemen. Dave, thanks for coming back. It's been a while since you've been on, and I'm looking forward to talking over you as much as possible.
Oh, please do. It's funny. I feel like I'm finally leaving my quarantine, but my quarantine's been like 2 years. So I'm glad to be back.
Yes, if you haven't followed, Dave's been out of the biz for a little bit, but now he's back. So we're going to lean on him a little bit this morning. Gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. WhyReboot launches a Wi-Fi 6 certified remotely deployed networks. That is a mouthful. Notwithstanding, what WhyReboot is doing is they're launching their Ruckus Wi-Fi 6 certified access points with the latest models that Ruckus has on the market, and also launching a Cumulus 6 wireless program. And what that is it's a essentially a remote maintenance platform for the network system. But what's so cool about this entire launch that Bjorn is talking about here is he's recognizing that a lot of integrators can't do a lot. They're not able to get out and get into most clients' homes. But with the huge, massive influx of work from home and learn from home going on the last month or so, clients all over the world are discovering that their networks kind of suck. So this is fantastic. Jimmy, I want to start with you on this one. Networking has always been, that thing that we in the channel have talked about as the foundational brick, followed up closely or followed after power, depending on who you talk to, which is why I'm asking you that question. But as one of those, core principle things, this is something that a lot of integrators will kind of start with, but they don't necessarily push real hard if a client pushes back on network and some of the foundational stuff like that. What we're seeing right now is every client, whether it's a residential, commercial, what have you, every client is realizing that their network is the most important thing. Obviously, what Bjorn and WhyReboot is doing is fantastic. We are expecting to see more of this. How do dealers capitalize on this kind of thing going forward?
I don't think it's going to be as challenging as we might think, and I think that's because network is so tangible. It's in your face. Like, you just had a latency issue, and I don't know if it's me or you, but a couple words kind of came in and out. I've been on plenty of these things, Zoom meetings, what have you, for the last month, and 20, 30 people will be up on a screen, and somebody will have a hard time, getting through. Every other word's coming in, out. What did you say? And if you're a business person and you're used to a robust network, because maybe you're a corporation, spared no expense, knew that that network was such an important part of the infrastructure. Then you go to your house and you're using your ISP trying to do the same thing and realizing it's nowhere near, that kind of capacity. I think network is already shown to be uber important for that work from home, learn from home stratus that's new to us. But it is so tangible. And if it's not working, the customer knows right away. And that's the challenge as it relates to power. And yes, Matt, power is important, but I would say that network has at least 12 years on us power people, because, network is right there. If it's not working, hey, this thing's not working, come out and fix it. Well, it's your network connection. If I said it's your power, you'd look up in the ceiling, see the lights are on and say, you're crazy, man, I've got power, right? So I don't think it's as hard as, some might think it's going to be, or it has been. Certainly, I feel like dealers have been focused on it for years now.
Yeah.
Well, dealers have been focused on it for years, but it was for a while, it was certainly kind of trying to draw the dealers to it. It was painful for years and years. I mean, you go back to the CEDIA days, starting in 2005, 2006, and trying to convince people that the number one skill or asset that they have in the company is network and IP capabilities. And I think we're there now for sure. And so now we're kind of at a point where the network and connectivity is it's almost a utility at this point. So you were talking about power. It's funny because in the US, Matt, for our friends up north, a while back, Congress had talked about making the internet a utility, and people were freaking out. Well, I think people are going to start to really see that power, water, shelter, and internet are the main things that you need. And so Bjorn's a really bright guy. He's onto something. And I agree that this is not a hard sell whatsoever, because even though it's not as easy as seeing as a light on or off, it's pretty easy to see when you're getting buffering or you're getting interruptions. So I think Bjorn's onto something. And I liked in the article, the other thing was the fact that basically that if you wind up canceling the service or whatever, you still get access. It's not going to shut everything off.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that license continues. I saw that. That was good.
Yeah. Dave, have you, I'm trying to think who was pushing it through, but probably a year ago, somebody in Congress was trying to push through that internet access was essentially a right.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was, it was definitely someone on the Democratic side. I believe it actually might have been Bernie Sanders. So I think that it might have been him, but it hasn't gotten anywhere. But no. I think you're going to see some movement moving forward as connectivity is a universal right. So I know like there's a lot of talk about universal basic income and stuff like that. Well, before we can get to UBI for universal basic income, if we can just get to universal basic internet, I think we'll be good.
Uncle Richie, the one thing in here that I got really excited about is, Wi-Fi 6 is exciting. It's going to do a lot. It's going to be very effective for a lot of people. But in this, the thing that speaks to us as integrators is the remote connectivity and the monitoring and all of that. We've gone down this path, for a couple of years. You and I have talked about this for years, about how remote access is crucial in days like today and going forward. Is this something that most integrators should start to reshape their business around?
Well, I think that for most integrators if you're late to the game, the good news is that there is a situation that now makes you offering this service, or you at least pointing out this service as something viable, as a value add to a system. What we're going to see over the next year, and it's happening quickly right now. Obviously my wife was on the show from the LFH 2 weeks ago, a week ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks
Uh,
ago. Seems like a year ago.
Feels like a year. But she's working very closely with school districts. That's one of her one of the businesses as a consultant that she does. And what we're seeing right now is you're going to be seeing kind of that first layer of connectivity, which is the subsidized connectivity, right? Google, all of the large companies are just pumping out hotspots right now, the underserved areas, basically fleshing out the network 5 years ahead of schedule. I mean, it was going to be a process to begin with. It's just an accelerated process. And when you reach that first layer of basic access, a municipal access, for lack of a better term, that's going to be great where you at least have some form of connectivity. However, work from home is going to change that a lot. And we're not going to see a retraction in work from home. We're going to see an increase in work from home. So that's going to lead to one of two things. That's going to lead to individuals, professionals who work from home, who decide that they're going to invest in their bandwidth and their infrastructure to be able to increase the quality of their workflow. That's going to be one route. And people who have the means are going to say, oh, absolutely. In my house, I want to be able to, if I'm in the upstairs in the bedroom and I'm in a conference call, I want to be able to go downstairs to my office and not have a drop. Now, from a municipal system, that's not going to work. You're going to have issues. But they're going to make that determination that this is a way for me as a professional and working from home to create the optimal office environment and working environment for me. The second subset that we're going to see that's just starting to be talked about right now is you're going to see that companies, much like with when you first had cell phones, your company never paid partial of your bill.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon now for companies to subsidize a mobile phone bill, right? Because they are using that for company services. What we will probably see, at least what I think we're going to see with some of these companies, is that they're going to wind up getting some form of benefit added to increase their services, to increase the reliability of their services. Because again, think about it this way. If you've got a product manager or you've got a middle management group and they've got to be part of a meeting and they are in a work from home situation, well, the company can't enforce the performance metrics on that employee if the employee is providing their own network and if the employee is providing their own connectivity. How do you dock somebody for missing a meeting because the company didn't necessarily provide it? There's going to be some very tricky employment questions that are going to come up. And so what I think will happen at that point is integrators are going to be able to say, hey, look, this is something that in order to benefit your work and everything else, you also should start looking at your employer with this. It changes the conversation. Also, for integrators, going out to employers and saying, hey, your workforce is important to you. This is changing. There are ways to provide benefit to your employees who you want to retain and you want to make them as efficient as possible to do it. Again, if I was an integrator, if I was selling gear, that'd be the first thing I'd be looking at. I would be looking at small businesses saying, how can you assist? Because as an employer, again, you're extending that IT structure and working through with them.
Let me pull that thread for a minute, because this is something that came up on AV in the AM, as well as a couple other things, as obviously as this work from home situation keeps growing. I've heard a couple people say that the residential, the CI, the CDA channel is the only one poised for this, to be able to deal with this. I've heard a couple people say, no, this is going to be the domain of the Avixa crowd. Then when I talk to a client of mine who, let's just say he works for a major manufacturer that plays really heavy in the IT space, and he works on the VAR side, the value-added reseller side. He said that those VARs are going to decimate everybody else in this because they've already got their foot in the door. I see Dave shaking his head. My question is, on the small business side, not a problem. Anybody can technically service them. But what happens when you're dealing with that mid-corporate size, where you've got a bunch of people that want to work from home, but they have strict network guidelines and certifications and set, a set scope that anyone remote has to follow to be able to work remotely? Where's
I'll-
that? Who's gonna benefit from that?
I'll jump in if that's okay. Only because I've been waiting to speak for 2 years, so I'm like, oh, pick me. Here's a
Can we
couple
mute Dave
things.
for a sec?
Here's a couple things. One of them is that every single, so whether it's the CD crowd, the Avixa crowd, the VAR side of things, everyone has the opportunity to make a ton of money. And you know who's going to actually save the most money is the employers. If we look at the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year out, you look at the employers, a cost to help upgrade a home office for an employee is significantly cheaper than the overhead of renting office space for that person. So, so a couple things. One of them is that do I think that the CEDIA channel has a little bit of a leg up to the Avixa channel? A little bit, like tiny bit, and that is because they're already in the home. However, if you look at who a lot of their clients are, they're CEOs, they're wealthy people, they have businesses. So people will be like, oh, well, you've done my conference room. Can you come to my house? And it's going to probably be a little bit of the same thing, which is that you've done my house. Can you do my conference room? I think that this may change the culture a little bit in North America to be more like Europe, which is that I'm not a commercial dealer or a residential dealer. I do both. And that is still some of the case, you know, at least last time I was at CEDIA, it was about 3/4 of the revenue came from the commercial side. But so, yes, I think that there is opportunities for both sides, a lot of money to be made in what I would consider to be the high performance home office. So I don't see one side capitalizing more than others. I just don't think the VARs are going to be the ones who take this channel by storm.
I'm going to jump in on this too, real quick. And because Dave just absolutely zoned in on a phrase that I'm jumping on. The high
This one?
home office. For Resi integrators, jump all over it. If nothing else, the act of putting up a custom green screen in a home office environment. If nothing else, setting up high performance cameras and a microphone and maybe even a small mixer to configure and create the optimal work from home environment. Larger commercial companies might not touch it. Why? Because it's too, right? Yeah. They're not going to do a truck roll. An integrator in that instance is absolutely tailor-made for that. That is something that they could do 4 or 5 truck rolls, get a package together, and again, you know, XYZ camera, XYZ microphone, mic stand, green screen situation, and then a good, better, best scenario in terms of the networking, right? Yep. Again, we've got to consider, you know, what Bjorn and what Hagai are doing over at Access. I mean, they're East Coast and West Coast counterparts, right? And I was fortunate that I dealt with Ruckus. I actually sat down with the guys when Ruckus wasn't Ruckus. And I told the story many times. You know, I knew the guys when they pivoted away from what they started the company with to become a networking company. But one of the things to consider with it is that is always going to be, you know, that a bespoke network is a bespoke network. You know, there's going to be a budget for it, and you're absolutely going to be creating the optimal high performance environment. So creators, it's always about that good, better, best scenario and where the compromises are. You know, there are going to be people who are going to have the Eero solution. There are going to be people who have the Amplify solution from Ubiquity, right? Kind of a do-it-yourself version that somebody can work with, you know, and Mitch Klein always talked about the do it with me crowd, right? Then you've got the next step up with the do it with me crowd, right? And you may move into that next tier of a somewhat managed remote solution that a technically competent integrator can manage, and basically not screw things up too much. And then you move into that next tier, which is, you're basically an extension of a corporate IT department, and you've got very specific rules. You're talking about HIPAA, you're talking about disclosure, you're talking about FTC requirements. I mean, you're talking about all of these things that from a work from home environment, that once you start talking about financial, banking, personal information, you have a whole new subset. And, the new one that I keep hearing from everybody these days is that, there's riches and niches. There's riches and
I love that. I love that. That's a great saying. The reason why I came up with high performance home office, and I was talking about it to Joe Whitaker last week and on his live stream and stuff, is it came from the CEDIA classes, developing a high performance home theater. And so you think of, from a home office, it's a microcosm of almost everything else. I will throw acoustics in there. I think that matters as well, but it's all of these things. So you think of a home theater as an example. Lighting matters. The video matters. The audio matters. The sound isolation. I think another thing to think of for the dealers, excuse me, hopefully allergies, not the other stuff, is that sound isolation as well. So quiet rooms. I definitely think people are going to learn the benefits of quiet. And so I think, like, I've talked to my wife and, well, pretty much anyone who will listen about how my sister-in-law has had 102-degree fever for 19 straight days. Like, it's horrible. All of this is horrible. But if you take a second, you take a step back and you look at, there are a lot of positive things that are going to come out of this as well. And work-life balance is going to increase. We have these opportunities that are coming our way. For our channel alone, I think this is a potential gold mine. And no, this doesn't mean that you're ripping off your clients or whatever. You can improve their quality of life. And so I couldn't be any more optimistic than I am right now.
All right, we're going to leave that one for a minute because I could probably go on that one for another 10, 20 minutes, and then Jimmy would still be in the corner not saying anything. So
I'm just waiting.
It's hard to talk in over top of those two. They're never getting on the same show again. That's what we've learned from this. All right, gentlemen, let's go to our next and what will now be our last story of the day, which is my fault for asking a follow-up that sent us down that rabbit trail. Residential tech today, what Dante means for home audio, from our good friend Jeremy Glowacki. If you've been living under a rug and only doing residential, you may not have heard the term Dante. Dante is an AV over IP solution that literally dominates. Jeremy said it, but he's not wrong. It dominates the pro AV and especially the live AV world as far as networked audio. What's happening is we're seeing some new products from JBL Synthesis, Elan, PowerSoft, just to name a few, that are including Dante into their systems as a way to move audio around, obviously not only the house but the theater, but a property, and get some fantastic capabilities with this. Jimmy, I'm going to start with you because they've talked so much and it seems only fair. When you see this, you with Surgex, obviously you're playing in both worlds. You're in the resi side, but Surgex also has a huge foot in the commercial side. And Dante's been so strong in commercial for honestly the last 5 to 10 years. What is it going to take for a solution like Dante that is just getting its foot in the door in residential? It has been here for a couple of years, but it's just very slowly moving in. What's it going to take for your average, CEDIA channel residential integrator to understand Dante, to jump on board with it and learn to take advantage of it and reshape, not reshape their business, but kind of change some business practices to utilize this?
Well, first I'll say, when I read the article, I thought Dante was a simplistic thing. And then when we started talking pre-show, I heard it was complex. I'm like, oh, like, I thought this was supposed to be easier for our channel. And if it were going to be easier, then I'd say adaptation would be smoother and quicker. But if it's not easy, then I will say if they're trying to get their foot in the door, I mean, similarly, SurgeX wasn't in Resi. We kind of were and then weren't, and we're back since 2014. We're a black box, and we just simply plug in and then we provide power to other things. And that's been painstaking, lots of energy dedicated through 15 different rep territories and 70 feet on the street. And, 5 years, 6 years in now, I feel like we've made some really good progress. And here's a thing that's been out, you said 10 years, and in the Resi space for a few of those, it sounds like, that Dave and Richard said that weren't that easy. It's not that easy. I'm afraid it's going to be an uphill battle, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Rich, I'm going to come to you, and then we'll get to Dave if he doesn't jump in. You're just getting teased because you just came back, dude. That's all. I got nothing but love for you. Richie, you and I were talking pre-show. I will be perfectly honest. I've never used Dante in a residential environment. We've used it in commercial, as I said, for years, and in the live space a lot. To Jimmy's point, when you look at it on the surface, yeah, it's cool. We're sending audio over IP. Cool, no problem. When you actually dig into Dante, and if you make your way through those certification levels, no less, it can be a lot. What's the learning curve actually going to be for most residential integrators?
We had the same thing with video over IP. So is Dante a plug and play solution for residential? Right now, no. Will there be a point once manufacturers see that this is a direction that we're moving in? They will then put together tools that will flatten that learning curve. Again, early on in video over IP, you had dedicated switches, and it was a pre-configured switch. What would happen?
Yeah.
The company, and they said, we do video over IP. How do you do that? You tell us how many gazintas, how many gazoutas. We figure if you've got 10, 16, or 24 of them. You got 24 of them, we ship you this box. What I do with the box? Don't worry about it. We took care of it for you. Okay, well, what about the rest of my network? We don't care. It's done. This is it. It's a point-to-point closed loop. That's how we started with it was the V over IP. We weren't even at the AV over IP, right? Dante, because again, a 4,000 square foot house is not a 40,000 seat arena. You have completely different mechanics to work with. And so Dante made everybody's life easier from a commercial. Again, why was it used? Concerts. Concerts. That's how it started. Then they went, holy cow, we can do our stadium this way. We can do our sports arena this way. We can now do our 10,000 seat corporate event here. And it grew. Oh, our amusement park? Wait a minute, we can do that? And it grew from there because it became more convenient to deal with a digital signal transmitted this way as opposed to an electrical signal. You don't have necessarily those constraints in a residential environment. So, residential manufacturers aren't going to jump on it to begin with. However, as things are changing, what is happening with these manufacturers, there are several manufacturers who didn't want to adopt Dante because the role has always been, why join somebody else's protocol when we can make our own? There's a couple of manufacturers who shall not be named that went, we can't make our own. It's not going to happen. And they begrudgingly adopted it. As such, everybody else, you needed one. Once that first one that kind of came on, the others are going, we better do this too. And so from a residential standpoint, what's going to happen is, and I think Jimmy was absolutely right. Is it going to be difficult for integrators? Yeah. If you're going to be an early adopter, right? You need to have some DSP chops. You need to know what you're looking at. In the interim though, manufacturers, as they adopt this, are going to put tools together to make it easier. Again, Sergey's kind of came in with, I've seen their presentation at a Resi show and a commercial show. There's a different tone. There's a whole different process to it. Both aren't applicable. And what we will see is manufacturers as they start to adopt. I've used Dante in a residential application. It was tough the first time around. The reason being is that all of a sudden we had all kinds of networking conditions that we had to deal with, because you do have things that are chatty if you're not careful. And, it does require a skill set, which dovetails back into get your networking down. You're going to buy canned solutions, which are, this is it. This is your Dante switch. These are your Dante speakers, and never the twain shall meet with the other stuff. And as time passes, integrators will get more comfortable and they have more options available to them. They will be able to create mixed environments, but it's not going to happen until that first layer. I'm excited about it because I think that it does provide a lot of real world fixes to bad room problems. Dave, I teed it up, man. I couldn't.
Well, you did tee it up.
No, I'm asking you an actual question before you find a rabbit trail.
Okay.
As the only one of us sitting in the little performance audio space with the sub and the speaker and the treatments and everything else, is the number one, or maybe the number two pushback, if the number one pushback is, say, complexity, is the number two pushback going to be that this digital audio sent over a network is never going to sound as good as the traditional way we've always done it? Is that going to be the pushback?
I don't think that will be the pushback. You will get audio files. You've got guys who are willing to pay $7,500 for 1 meter of RCA cables. So, sure, you do a blind study with them, they won't be able to tell the difference. So I guarantee you. I don't think that's the reason why. I don't think. I think it's iffy if Dante makes it into the residential market, because it has to be mainstream adoption and it has to be an elegant solution for the customer. Ultimately, is Dante an elegant solution for the end user? And if it is, then great. If people are going to buy it, you have to have it in scale. You got to be able to get clients to use it. We know that Dante is reliable. The reliability of it works great, and that's one of the most important things. But I don't think it's because of the quality of the audio. Mainly when we are distributing audio through the house anyways, we're doing it. It's not for critical listening. If you've got a critical listening environment, you're running your music differently anyways. So I think it's more about market conditions. The best way to look at it is KNX. KNX, Russ Sound and other companies were looking to bring KNX into the U.S. market. KNX is great, just not really making any penetration here in the U.S. market. I'd love to see Dante make it, but just because a couple of manufacturers are trying it does not mean that it's going to receive mainstream adoption. I also thought, that AVB, audio video bridging, was going to be the solution, because Cisco has talked about for years that they're going to put the AVB chips natively into their routers and switches. And so you wouldn't need Dante. It would be significantly easier. And that was supposed to start happening this year. So we'll see. So I'm excited about it to a certain extent, but I'm not sure if it's going to actually make it as a true market player.
I'm kind of glad you brought up AVB, because again, in the commercial space, walking around Infocom 4, 5, 6 years ago, AVB was all the buzz.
Yeah.
AVB was what was going to happen. And then it didn't.
Well, they changed the name. It was Avenue and stuff. And so, but the numbers I'd been told was that the chipsets, they really weren't going to start shipping until 2020. So I haven't been in touch with my Intel contact in a couple years, but I'd be curious to see if we're starting to see AVB put into consumer grade routers and switches. And if that's the case, we might see something coming down the road that competes primarily with the interfaces that you get from like Sonos as an example.
Yeah, very good. All right, gentlemen, we are going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Jimmy, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Surgex, where can they do that?
Just head over to espsurgex.com.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend. Mr. Fregosa, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Fregosa Design, where can they do that?
You can find us on the website, fregosadesign.com. Probably the best place is on the interwebs, Twitter, @rfregosa. But if I had my choice, it would be definitely here. Find me on AVNation.tv, obviously here on ResiWeek, but also on a show with my good friend Steve Greenblatt, The State of Control, and supporting the vendors. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is that the LFH Summit was a huge volunteer effort, and it was done specifically for the viewers. Obviously, it was, nobody was charging admission or anything like that. I mean, this is absolutely a monumental effort made by all of the people running the shows, and so the biggest thing that you can do is support the shows. That's what we do more than anything else.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Pedigo. If people want to connect with you, learn all about sound management, sound control, and all the new stuff at your new gigs, where can they find that?
Two easy places. One is Dave Pedigo. Just on Twitter, I'm at Dave Pedigo. And then just go to auralex.com, AURALEX. We've got a whole bunch of information, and we're putting out new articles every week on how to improve audio, whether it's podcasts, home theaters, etc. Trying to have a new go-to market strategy for content.
Beautiful.
And I'll just say one more thing, which is the reason why they brought me on is just to help dealers, so if people are interested in being a dealer, please feel free to reach out to me. Sorry for the shameless plug.
No, shameless plugs are good. That's what I pay Richie for. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of all the other shows in all the other verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. When you're on the site again, you can also check out all the recorded sessions from the Learn From Home Summit for both the residential and the commercial site. Any of the presenters that have given us permission to post that, you'll find it there. You can find something like 70 or 100 hours somewhere in there of recorded content. There's a ton. So definitely check that out. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek. And you two are never allowed to be on the same show again.
It's funny because, usually when I was on it, it was you and I, Richard. We were always on it.
You were always on together. And now we know why we didn't do that anymore.